When you create your dream in a bottle, it's really all about choosing the correct images and then working with layers and masks to create the dream. So in my case, I have a background for the bottle. I have the beach that I'm going to put it on as my location. I have a cityscape. I have an island. I have a coral reef, and I have a moon and a scuba diver as my extra objects. So I'm going to combine these into my dream. So first, what I'm going to do is my bottle is on the background layer and it's locked, so I need to double click on my name and say OK. So now it's layer 0 and the lock has gone away. I'm going to take my magic wand tool, select the white background, and that's pretty good. It's got everything, but it didn't quite get the top. So I'm going to switch to my quick selection tool, make sure it's set to minus, and I'm going to make sure I have that selected. Now, I don't want to select the background, I want to select the bottle, so I have to go select inverse. So now just my bottle is selected, and I'm going to click on my mask. Now this mask is going to be super important, and we're going to use it several times. So I'm going to take this layer and I am going to leave it here for now. But actually I'm going to also make a copy of it and I'm going to bring that right to the top. So it's on top of everything else. And I'm going to say multiply here, and you will see in a second why. So I will multiply that with whatever is in behind, because now when I turn on my tropical beach, I have this bottle on top, and I have an idea of where that bottle is going to sit. So that's my tropical beach. I'm not actually going to do anything to the tropical beach. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Now I want to give this bottle a bit of a glow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer just above the tropical beach layer, so a blank layer. I'm going to take a selection tool, and I'm going to make a piece behind my box. I'll make a selection this size. And because my bottle isn't very skinny, it gets fat down here, I'm actually going to add to that selection. I'm going to make it bigger down here behind the bottle, so I have a nice large space. And on my blank layer, I'm going to go Edit Fill. I'm going to fill that with white and say OK. So that's quite there. And now, because I want this to have a glow, I'm going to select Deselect it, and I'm going to go Filter, Blur, and I'm going to give it a Gaussian blur, which blends it out. And by playing with it, you can see how there's a glow that extends out from the bottle. And I'm going to keep that right where and say OK. All right. Now, so you can see how the bottle glows when I turn that on and off. Now, the first thing I'm going to choose for my Singapore city, I'm going to choose, all right, where do I want Singapore to be in relationship to the bottle? So I'm going to want the high-rise buildings up at the top, and it's a little large, so I'm going to just drag it down, hold down my shift key so I don't distort it, and I'm going to pull this in so I get my cityscape up here, roughly there, into the top of the bottle, and I want to go right to the top of the glass, right there. So I'm going to hit enter to apply that change. Now the next, my island in front, I want that in front of the Singapore. Oh, be careful that you don't move the layer, so make sure you switch to the right layer. And we're going to get Singapore in front here. And what we've got to do is we've got to get rid of that sky so we can see where it ends up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my quick selection tool again. I'm going to draw over the sky, select that sky selection, and click Select Inverse, again because the sky is what I don't want. And I'm going to create my mask. So now I have my island, and I can move the island in front of Singapore, roughly where I want it, right there. And if I do that in the right place, I don't even have to worry about the reflection in Singapore. I'm just going to move it right around here. So that looks like that's going to work. The next layer down is my coral reef, and I'm going to turn that on, and again I'm going to make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to move my coral reef down, and again it's too large. I want to show more of it, so I'm going to pull this down so it fits in here, and I'm going to choose to include it at around this point, maybe even a tiny bit smaller than that. So I'm going to put my coral reef down in here, so that sits in the bottle as well. I'm going to hit enter with that. Now the coral reef I actually want to blend in with my ocean, so what I'm going to do here is again I'm going to create a layer mask, but I will show you how to do that blending in a second. So now we have the 3 layers, and now the problem is they don't actually fit in the bottle. So I'm going to show you a quick trick on how to actually constrain it so it's inside the bottle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the mask that I'm using for the bottle. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say add mask to selection. So now I've got the bottle selected again. I'm going to go to my Singapore cityscape, and I'm going to click on my mask. So now it's masked off Singapore, so it's just inside there. Again, I'm going to go add mask to selection. I'm going to go to my coral reef, and I'm going to make a mask. And again, I'm going to add mask to selection. I'm going to go to my island here, and in this case I already have a mask, so I can't just click, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill everything that isn't in the bottle also with black. So I'm going to go select inverse, so I have all the outside selected. I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask, which I am, with the white line around here, and I'm going to go edit, fill, and I'm going to choose black this time, so it masks it off, and say OK. So now my island is constrained as well. And last but not least, I'm going to look at this blend here, and so I've got to play with that a little bit more. I'm going to go select, deselect. So now I've got the thing selected. I'm going to go to my coral reef, and I want to blend this in. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the mask of my coral reef, and I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm going to make sure it's quite large, and if you need to change the size, you just click on here. Make sure you've got a soft one selected, and then just by brushing just above, I can slowly brush into it until the line disappears, and my ocean and my coral reef blend nicely together. Now, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, you know what? The island, it's not quite, it's a little bit too high. So what you can do is you can go to your mask and see it's locked to the object. So I'm going to actually unlock that because I know the cropping works exactly the way I want it. So I'm going to unclick the lock here, and now I can make sure I have my mask selected, and with my selection tool I can move this island around a little bit. Okay, whoops, actually I don't want to move the mask, I want to move the island. So I have to make sure I have the island selected, and now I can move the island around just a bit, but you notice it's already committed to where Singapore is, so I might just have to leave it the way it is. But that's, you can move it around without the mask. And for example, I could go to Singapore, and I can say, well, you know what, I'm going to unlock that as well. I'm going to choose Singapore, and that way the high rise in there not quite working for me. So I'm going to move this down a bit and bring the high rise in this way. And now I think I'm actually quite happy with that. Okay. So now I've got those objects, and it's looking pretty good. Now the only thing that I'm not really liking here is my bottle. I've blended in here, and it's multiply. If I had it as normal, the bottle would cover everything up, which doesn't help me. So the multiply is quite good, but I also want this part in multiply. When you're looking at it, the parts of the bottle look quite washed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bottle, I'm going to make a copy of it by dragging onto the layer. So I have a second copy of the bottle, and I'm going to not have that one multiply. I'm going to have this one as normal. And now I got to get rid of the white. So I'm on my bottle, and I already have a selection, but I can take my magic wand tool and I can click on the white in the bottle. And that's pretty good, but I want to include, I'm going to make sure it's on plus, I'm going to include the other white parts of the bottle as well. So I'm going to click a few more places to make sure I've got those. So that's pretty good, and the rest I think I want to keep. So I want to add this to the mask. I make sure I'm on my mask, and I'm going to go edit fill with black. So I have that mask. Now I have the white parts of the bottle on top, and I have the other parts sitting here. And I'm going to take the multiply on top just because it gives it a bit of a kick with the shadow there. And just to go back to my layer, the glow layer, and I've noticed I've moved it a little bit over, so I'm going to go and bring that glow layer and I'm going to bring it back behind my bottle. But you can see how that gives us a nice glow to the bottle. So now it's really popping off the page, backlit. The very last thing I need to do is I need to bring in my two extra objects, my scuba diver and my moon. So let's do the scuba diver first. Turn the moon off again. Again, I'm going to use my magic wand tool. I'm going to click on the white background, but that is selecting more than what I actually expected in here. So we're going to click, actually no, I gotta turn the bottle off. That's actually pretty good. It's got most things. It's got a little bit of the shadow here, so I'm going to add that shadow so I don't end up with that as part of my image. And I'm going to see what that looks like. I'm going to create a mask on the inverse again, so select inverse. And so I have just my scuba diver and background selected and create a mask for that. So that's a pretty good scuba diver. I'm going to take my selection tool. He's way too big for my image right now, so I'm going to bring him down, make him a nice size here. I'm going to rotate him, and I'm going to have him swim into my picture here. Alright, a little bit smaller still. So that's not bad. He's swimming into my bottle here. But his legs are sticking out, so I'm going to hit enter to apply my change. And again, I'm going to crop this out. So I'm going to take my mask of my bottle again. I'm going to go add mask to selection. So I have that selected. And I'm going to select inverse. And I'm going to go back to my scuba diver. And I'm going to go edit fill. I'll make sure I'm on my mask. Go edit fill. And fill with black again. So I've taken his legs out, so they're cropped out. Last one, the moon. So same kind of deal. I'm going to turn on my moon. Select, deselect. I'm going to start with my magic wand tool. Click, make sure I'm on my moon layer. Click on the black part. Select the inverse and create a mask. So now I have my moon roughly the way it is. So it's way too big for my image. So I'm going to bring it down. Now you could have it as part of the sky here, which might look a little hokey. What I want to do is I want to bring him into Singapore. So I'm going to bring my moon into here. But it's still too big. I'm going to bring it down a little bit in size. I want that moon to be over Singapore. And just sort of sticking out like this into the sky of Singapore. So that's pretty good. So I'm going to take that, hit enter for the size. Again, I'm going to select my mask, add mask to selection. I'm going to go to my moon layer, and I'm going to go select inverse, and I'm going to go edit, fill. Oops, I got to be on my mask layer, so edit fill, and fill with black again. So again, it's fitting in here. Now I don't really want the moon in front of the buildings. That looks a little awkward, so I'm going to turn the moon off for a second, and I'm going to select these buildings here. So I have this part deselected, so I'm going to add this to the selection, and I'm going to again be on my mask, and I'm going to use my quick selection tool, and I'm going to add to that selection, and I'm going to draw on here, but I was in the moon layer. That was a mistake, so I'm going to undo that, make sure I'm on my cityscape of Singapore here, and then I can draw on the buildings and get these two buildings as part of my selection. Oops, not the sky though, so I've got to be a little careful to clean that up. So now I've got my sky clear. Again, I'm going to go back to my moon, turn that on again, and fix that. So I'm going to go edit fill, and fill with black. So now my moon is behind the buildings. Select, deselect, and I'm done. I have my bottles in here, and you can see which one looks better to you. I have my scuba diver extra object, I have my moon, I have my coral reef, I have my island, and I have my cityscape. And my assignment is complete, and it took exactly 13 minutes to do. Thank you.